everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate all of you coming. I know some of you, this might be your first time here, and we do appreciate you coming. We have a lot of stories to share, experiences, and after worship, we will be in the fellowship hall, so we encourage you to join us, and we'll just be answering questions, telling more stories, and sharing about our trip. I ask that you have open hearts today. We're sharing just our personal experiences from our trip. We had an unbelievable time, and I'm really excited for all of you to hear about it. So throughout the service, it's going to be a little different than what our church might be used to. It's not going to be as structured. It'll be different, but I ask that you just have an open mind, open heart. As all of them talk in their talk, I know most of them are pretty nervous, so, but we're excited to share. I'm just going to pray before we move into the service, and then we have 2 songs if we can stand and sing. Cindy's going to be on the piano today, so she'll be playing. We have the words up on the board, so if you can stand with us and sing after I pray, that would be awesome. Again, we thank you so much for coming. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for bringing everyone here. Thank you for the 17 kids that got to experience this trip with us, and for the 4 chaperones that joined me to make this trip happen. We couldn't have done it without anybody in this congregation, so we thank everybody that's here with us, and we thank you for providing for all of us to get us to where we need to be to make a difference through you, and for that we're eternally grateful for that. So I pray that you speak through these kids' hearts today, and that you can in some way connect to everybody in this trip. We look forward to going back and sharing our stories, but for today I just ask that you're ever present in this building today. Amen. Yeah? Okay, one more.
You step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Oh, all I spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. Altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, I'm so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became born. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you are my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sins upon that cross. I'll never know how much it cost to see my sins upon that cross. Call on the name of the Lord and be saved. Call upon the name of the Lord and be saved. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me.
You guys may be seated.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Gabrielle, and I'm a senior at Portage High School. And Peyton and I will be talking about VBS that we did out on our mission. So on my first day, we went out into Village AV, and we did VBS. We just play with the kids. And those were all the kids that we played with in the village up on the screen. And when we got there, they were so excited to see us when our bus pulled in. They all came out from all of their houses, and they welcomed us with open arms and huge smiles on their faces. We played with them. We played kickball, volleyball. We also played this crazy jumping game where you pass the ball to each other. And it was super fun. And they actually took us to the school that they went to. They kind of do a morning and afternoon shift. So these kids were the afternoon. So we played with them all morning. They took us to their school where we taught everyone who was there for like the morning part of school, the story of the resurrection. That was really cool to see. And there was a translator there that sang with them, and we all sang together. It was super cool. But my favorite part of VBS is when we came back from the school, and all those kids actually went for their afternoon education. And there were these two kids that were a little too young to go to school. This little boy and this little girl. And they kept talking to us about their family, and actually their 14-year-old sister had a daughter about a week before we got there, so she was only about a week old. And he was so excited to tell us about her that he actually wanted to show us to her. So he took us back to their house. We went past the kickball fields, past a couple of trees, and we came upon their house. So this is the house that they lived in. The picture on your guys' left is like their living area and where like their beds are. They actually had a TV in there. I don't know how. It's kind of in the middle. And then the picture on your guys' right is their kitchen. So their that tire in the middle is actually served as their stove. There's a little table on like the back corner where they kept a couple vegetables and bowls. That was all they really had for their kitchen. And then this was actually their bathroom. There were 3 separate parts of their house. That one main part that they lived in, and then the kitchen, and then this was their bathroom, kind of like a campsite almost. As you can see, the bathroom is only held up by like sticks and blankets. And that blue tarp on the right side, this is kind of the inside, is where they showered. And then that 5-gallon pail on the ground was actually their toilet. So when we first got back there, it honestly took my breath away that this little boy and their family lived in these conditions, and I thought it was insane. It really put my life into perspective that this little boy was so excited about his like new sister, but really his niece, and that he just found joy even with the life that he had, and even though the conditions weren't great for the 14-year-old, his 14-year-old sister to have a child, that he was so excited and they welcomed them all together, and that it made me thankful for the life that I have today and the home that I live in, and it really showed that family matters and it can conquer.
Hi, I'm Peyton Mueller. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the little girl that was there that day. So she was Marciella. So when we came back from BBS from the school, we were all playing games like Gabby said, and I noticed this little girl walking up, and she had the biggest smile. She was so adorable, and she came up to me, and one thing that a lot of them did, I had painted nails, so they would grab my hands and look at my nails. And so Marciella did that. She grabbed my hand and looked at my nails, and then she immediately showed me her nails because she had her nails painted too. And so we kept saying bonita, which means pretty in Spanish, and she just loved that. She kept looking at my nails and comparing them to hers. She was adorable, but the first thing I noticed in Marciella were her shoes. If you can see in the picture, her shoes were far too big for her, and I'm sure that that's probably the only pair she had. We ended up taking them off during the day because they were just in the way. They weren't really serving its purpose. We played a little bit of soccer right away, and then after that, she wanted me to pick her up, and the rest of the day, I was holding onto her because she would not let go. So she grabbed my sunglasses, and she put her sunglasses on, and I was asked to hold Jack's sunglasses. So if she had the sunglasses on, I had to put the sunglasses on. If she had them on her head, I had to put them on her head. She was just the cutest little girl, and I'll never forget her. She kept singing all day, and I couldn't really communicate with her because I don't speak Spanish, but that didn't really matter to me. She was still super happy and super excited to be playing with us, so I'm just really grateful that I got to meet this little girl on the first mission there.
I'm Chloe Drucker. I am a senior at Portage High School, and I'm going to be talking about the optical part of the trip. So there was a group of people. We would go out to the different villages, and then we would help people. So people donated glasses, and we had all these different donated glasses, and then we had the optometrist come, and he would try to find their vision and try to match it to one of the donated glasses. So I went the second day, Carol went the first day that we were there, and we went in, we set up in the school, so we moved all the desks out and we rearranged it so that we could set up for this optical, and then we taped posters onto the wall so that we could point at them and we could test their vision, and then we also made a big room. We set up about 20 boxes of all these donated glasses, so if you donated glasses, thank you, because I got to see where those go. And then we also set up like a little box and people got to scan the people's eyes so that we could get a better reading of what their vision was. Carol actually did that the first day and Peyton did it the second day with me. So I got to be one of the people that pointed at the letters as the people were getting their eyes tested, getting different like prescriptions on their eyes, and then they would show me how much they could see. And the coolest part about the whole trip was seeing the people get the 20/20 vision and just having the biggest smile on their face, being so excited that they could see, because it was probably the first time that they've seen since their vision started going bad. And every time that we got a person to see 20/20 vision, we did a 20/20 dance, so we make them stand up, and we'd all stand up and sing the 20/20 song and do a little dance, and it was super cool. And Ed, he's in the blue shirt up there, he was the optometrist, and he always made sure, because sometimes they would have to take them outside because the older they got, it was harder to read the letters, so they'd go outside and look at a chicken, say, can you see this chicken more clearly? And it was, that's the only way they could get them to see. So every time they would go outside, Ed would make sure that I came out there, because he said the best part is just seeing them being able to see and seeing that smile. So I got to see so many people see better or get 20/20 vision, and it was the coolest experience I've ever had. And the people always would thank me and hug me, and I felt like I didn't do anything. I just pointed at this poster so that they could see. But they were so grateful, and it was the coolest experience I've ever had.
I'm Carol, and I worked optical the first day. So, Chloe's optical clinic was set up in a school when the first day the optical clinic for us was set up in a bar. So we didn't have very many like tables or anything to set up our equipment. So that was, first of all, very challenging. So I did the eye scanning. So what you would do is I'd scan people's eyes, and then I'd get a prescription that I would then hand to the optometrist, and he would then find the perfect glasses for the person. So towards the middle of the day, the first day that I was there, I had this 89-year-old grandmother come in, and it was obvious that her sight was very impaired because it required one of our translators and one of her family members to help her find a seat in our little clinic. And so I started doing the scanning, and her first eye I couldn't even get a reading on because it was so bad. And her second eye, I was able to get a reading on it, but her prescription showed that she probably didn't have very much sight at all in that eye. So that made me really sad because I didn't realize how important like our simple like eye checkups are here in the States and how lucky we are. And so I felt just really grateful that I was fortunate enough to have the resources here, but I was also very sad that we possibly weren't going to be able to help this lady. And later that day, I heard laughing coming from the other side of the clinic, and I looked, and it was that same 89-year-old lady. And they were fitting her with different glasses to see if she could see. And finally, the translator asked her, "Can you see?" And she said yes. And at first, I was like stunned because I didn't think this lady was ever going to see again. And then the translator, he was a joker. He liked to talk and make jokes, and so he asked the lady, "Am I pretty or am I ugly?" And she goes, "Oh, you're very ugly." And like there was no translation needed. Everybody in the clinic, no matter what language they spoke, knew that this lady could see. And it was just something that was so overwhelming and just like crazy for me. So my whole family also wears glasses, so every single morning when I put on my glasses and I can see it, I'm just reminded about this 89-year-old lady and how thankful I am that we had the resources and we were able to provide her with her sight again. It was really a crazy experience. So thank you for all your support.
She's wearing a pencil.
Hi, I'm Lacey Chapel. I'm a senior at Portage as well. And on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday,
we had the opportunity to attend 3 different church services in 3 different villages. And it was really cool to see the difference in all 3 of the church services. Although there were many similarities, everything about every single service was different and new. You never knew, like we didn't know what we were going to be walking into. And it was really cool to see how like welcoming they were to not only us, but to everybody in their village. Like they always had their doors open and they had really loud speakers. So it was almost like they were like, it was just, the noise of each service was just filling the streets. And it was so cool to see like how interesting each service was and how high energy they had. That is one thing that all of us got out of it, is the pastors were so passionate about their messages, and everything was high energy. Each service basically consisted of a testimony of what we thought was just members of the church. It wasn't even the pastor. And then lots of singing every single time. And then at the end of the service is when the pastor would give his message. And we always had interpreters because we had no idea what the pastors were saying. But it was many times we couldn't even understand the interpreter because the pastor got so into his message that he really didn't want to wait for the interpreter to say what he was saying. So they would just be talking over each other, and we really did not care. The fact of like how energetic all of it was and how passionate it was, I know everybody sitting around me, we just had a big smile on our face the whole time, and it was just so fun to sit in. At the Tuesday and Thursday services, every single time we would have offering, they'd have a really long song. And in those 2 services, we started a conga line around the church. And it was super cool to see how happy the kids were when we would go into the seats and like pull them from their parents and make them go in this line. And they were just, their faces were lit up and they were just so happy. And yeah.
Please.
Okay, so this is a video of the Thursday service. And this is the conga line that we had. Parts about the services is getting, and everybody in the church was so welcome of our energy and our excitement for being there. And another thing that touched a lot of us is on the Thursday service, Anna and Sid had the opportunity to sing, and each church had like a little band that would play for all the songs, as you could hear. And as they were in the middle of their second song, the band joined in with them, and I know, like Gabrielle and I for sure, it brought us to tears. It was cool to see all of them, like how they were that even showed how welcoming they were of us, and they were so excited to hear them sing, and to hear them join together was super cool. Hi.
that's about one of the first church services we went to. And in order to do that, got to back up a little to our travel day, which everything seemed to go wrong. We were traveling for probably about 24 hours, and most of those hours we were stuck on a plane in Madison. So we finally got there, and on our bus ride over there, we were passing all these houses. They were really kind of like heaps of metal, and we were passing up a lot of barbed wire fences or concrete fences with broken bottles on top of them. So eventually we got to the compound, and everyone was tired and jet lagged, and everyone was kind of down in the dumps. And personally, I was like, oh God, what did we get ourselves into? So we went to sleep, and the next day we woke up, or more, were forced up by Megan. And we took our cold showers, and we got on the cattle truck, which I was thinking, oh, it's going to be in town. It's not going to be that far. A quick ride in the cattle truck, and we'll be there. I was very wrong. So we went through town, and I was like, oh, well, it's going to be in a village. Then we passed all the villages, and eventually we were in a big sugarcane field. Well, all you could see was sugarcane. And the potholes in the road were so big that the cattle truck had to stop so he wouldn't tip over. So eventually, we got to the village, and there was this little church that was probably about the size of one of the Sunday school rooms that we have here. And it was painted bright colors of blue and yellow. And when we got there, they were already kind of starting the service. So we got in a little late, and most of the village was already there, and there were seats. And the cattle truck was full with all of us, so all of the members of the church had to give us their seats, and even went to their houses to get more seats for us. And like Lacey said, the doors were wide open. You could hear all the drums that they had going, and then two girls walked up and started singing. And we couldn't hear or understand what they were saying because they were speaking Spanish, and it was a rural village. So we had an interpreter, but he wasn't interpreting the song. And then two guys from a church in Texas went up and they sang a couple songs too. And then it was kind of overwhelming. I had to hold back tears myself because that was the first time I kind of felt the presence of God in that room, and just the love. And you could, even not understanding what they were saying, you could just tell how much they loved God and how strong the faith was in that room. And then after that, the pastor got up and talked about his sermon. And he kind of talked about his coming to faith story and how he was a tax collector, and then he came to God, and then he's a pastor now, and how it changed his life, and how everyone was just so thankful for the little that they had, which really put into perspective how much we have in the U.S., because as Gabby showed, and Payne, their houses really, they're nothing compared to what we have here, or to the church that we have here. And so that's when I realized kind of our purpose, and that we were there to help them, and to kind of realize our faith and make our faith stronger.
So I know it says we're singing two songs, but we're just going to do the first one. So if we could stand and sing with Sydney and Anna, that would be great.
Roberta, and I'm a junior in high school. On the first mission day in the Dominican, I chose to help out with the optical team, and my job was to look through bins and bins of glasses to try to find the right prescription for the patients. And not gonna lie, that job was kind of challenging, but it was also just super fun. But right next to the optical station, dental was going on, and there was this 3-year-old boy who had tons of infections in his mouth, and they were pretty fatal. So the doctors had to go in and remove a lot of his teeth and rearrange his tissues. The doctor said that this operation should have been done in a hospital with the aid of anesthesia, but in order to save his life, they had to do the operation then and there, providing all that they could, which was just a couple of round shots to his mouth. And all we heard for hours was his crying and screaming, and it was just super impactful. And it made me really think about how lucky we are today to have the resources and medical care that we have.
So I'm Kelly, one of the chaperones that went. One of the days I was able to go to medical, and that we just did in school in one of the communities. So dental and medical were together that day, but for medical, we were able to do some vital signs, able to find out why patients were there, why they needed to be seen. A lot of patients I noticed were talking about how they had stomach pains. So we were giving out parasite tablets, mainly because a lot of them there don't have like medical care like we do here. It's too expensive for them there. Also because their water there is not the healthiest. Hence why we weren't drinking their water. We were provided water from the compound every day. One thing that really stuck out for me is there was a doctor there, and his name was Pat. He's from Pennsylvania. He is actually a hand surgeon, but he did a fellowship in family practice as well. So he was there and was able to provide care for these patients and give out medications that they needed. So Pat, he didn't know that he was coming on this trip until 2 weeks before. But little did he know that he would make a very, very big impact on one person. So 3 weeks prior to our trip, there was a man in a community, and he was cutting down sugarcane in one of the fields, and his arm was hit with a machete. So he needed surgery for that, but it was too expensive for him, so he wasn't able to get the care that he needed. So Dr. Pat had found out about this man. He went to visit with the man and saw that his arm was very infected. The guy had no range of motion in his hand at all. So surgery was scheduled the next day with Dr. Pat. So Dr. Pat went into a hospital to do the surgery. He had to have one of the doctors from Dominican there with him because he doesn't have his license in Dominican. So the surgery was performed, and then after surgery, the guy was now able to move his hand. All the tools that they used for the surgery was just found in a bucket that we had at the compound. So all the instruments and everything that they had brought to the surgery was just kind of packed away in boxes at the compound where we stayed. So Dr. Pat kind of just thought of things that was needed and brought them over to the hospital with him because he knew that what he needed wasn't going to be provided for him. So just seeing that, or just hearing the story from Dr. Pat, and for him like not even to know that he was going to even come on this trip 2 weeks before, and then this happens and he's able to go and pretty much change someone's life, it's just very, very cool to hear. The guy was very grateful and was able to have movement with his hand now. So I just know that that's something that we are obviously grateful to have here in America. We have the care that we need, and there they don't because of the expenses. So that was a really cool experience to hear.
senior at Partyville High School, and on day 2, we went to the Village 50. Yeah, it was way out in the middle of nowhere. Like it was like an hour and a half bus ride on these rough roads. It was back there. We went there to do gardening, and when we got there, it almost kind of looked deserted until the kids heard the bus pull up, and then they realized that there were visitors. And I assume they don't get very many visitors because they came storming out of every house and every building that there was, just so excited to see us and so happy. I thought they were gonna just like run into the moving bus, to be honest. So when we got there, we parked the bus parked, and when we got out, they swarmed around us like, I don't know what, it was a swarm. It was insane. They were just, it was almost like they picked their one person, and that's who they would stick by all day. They found their person, and that was theirs. I hit the yellow, took my hat, kind of made me his person. Also took my phone for a little bit. And it was a rough village. It was not a lot of decent structures, and a lot of garbage and feces all around, and they were wandering around barefoot. Some of the kids were even half dressed because they just didn't have anything. And some of the bugs that were there were just insane. Like, they'd bite you, they'd leave bite marks size of walnuts on your legs. It was insane. I didn't get bit. They were black. Yeah. Gardening.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm from Partyville, and I'm a senior, and I also went gardening, but we didn't garden. So the kids there were so incredible, like just so different from what we see here, and like the houses and everything was just so different and insane. And the pictures that Gabrielle showed were a lot like the places that we saw when we were gardening, but the people had houses because of MGM. And these kids, they had no clothes on. Well, if they had a shirt, they didn't have pants. If they had pants, they didn't have a shirt. And their beds were made out of those rubber water crates that like you feed animals out of, and then just a sheet put over. And there was just nothing that they had. And the kids did not have any sense of right and wrong. Like, we were standing there watching the garden, watching people garden, and all of a sudden this kid goes behind outhouses and pulls out a donkey. Okay, donkey. And they find a stick on the ground and start hitting the donkey with the stick, and they think it's hilarious, they love doing it. And we were like, they got a kick out of our reaction, because we were like, no, you can't do that, and they just kept doing it because they thought we were funny. Yeah. But they didn't see anything wrong with that, and I just thought that was insane. Like, these kids were so happy, saw nothing wrong with the way they were living. And it was just very sad, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm a junior at Portage High School, and I'm also going to talk about gardening as well. I think I can speak for everybody that went on this trip that we all had aha moments, and today was definitely one for us. It was really difficult to see all the things that these people went through at this village, and like Lydia said, all of the buildings that were in this village were all built by MGM, and it was like 10 years in the making when we arrived. So I kind of want to talk about the children. I know that they touched on that a little bit. But like Jack said, all these children chased us when we were on the bus into the town. They were so excited to see us, and that was truly remarkable to see. As we arrived, the head gardener said to us, "You don't choose a kid, the kid chooses you." And as soon as we got off the bus, we saw that. Everybody was welcomed by one kid. I think there was one that picked Lydia out as she was on the bus, and he jumped on her, and this kid had no pantalones. And she carried him the whole day without pants. So that was crazy to see, and we hung out with them all day. We were the only 3 children that went on this gardening trip, the only ones in Village 50, so all these kids really clung to us. At one point, Jack went to garden. Lydia and I never really got the chance to do that. And we sat on stairs and had at least 10 kids around both of us, just touching us and braiding our hair, and that was crazy. These kids, like Lydia said, were happier than you could have ever imagined, and we embraced them with all that we had. Now, the hardest part of the day was definitely lunch. We had sandwiches provided by MGM and like cookies. So these children at this town, they didn't have food. So we had to go inside like a gated little park that they had there, and they locked the gate, and we all sat there drinking water and eating our food. And all these kids that we had experienced the day with gathered around, and they just sat around the outside of the park looking at us, and it was just awful. But at the end, we were able to give them extra sandwiches that we did have left, and that was pretty crazy. So I think I can speak for all 3 of us when I say that we were truly impacted by this day. It was the first time I really saw God through this trip, and I'm really thankful I went there, even though it was, yeah. So thank you guys for allowing us to go on this trip. It really means a lot.
I see your fingerprints, the work of your hands. It's all in your hands. I see the evidence, leaving nothing to chance. The world's in your hands. So I rest in your promises. Now I'm sure of this, I'm yours. Let the waters rise, I will stand as the oceans roar. Let the earth shake beneath me, let the mountains fall. You are God over the storm, and I am yours. I hear the voice of love calling me home to where I belong. It cripples every fear, and the ones who will kneel walk away healed. So I rest in your promises. Now I'm sure of this, I'm yours. No power strong enough to separate me from your love, I'm yours. So let the
school at NGM. So we were able to be a part of helping people inside Hato Mayor Village and just helping them get their life together and build stuff for them. But we were also able to help this couple. So their son was killed in the Dayton, Ohio shooting. He lost his life and was a victim of it. And they told us how much joy that they saw when we looked at our group. They said that we reminded him so much of our son and how much he would have loved being there with us and to meet us. And it was so cool that we got to be able there and be a part of helping them and just kind of rebuild their faith. His dad said that he was so close to his son, that he didn't understand why God took him away from him, and that he saw that God needed his son up in heaven with him more than they did on earth. And so, not only were they there, but there was a man and his uncle, he was an uncle, and his niece was also at the shooting, and she was able to survive. They were there the same week in the Dominican. But not only was that cool enough, but as this man was telling his story to everybody there at our closing session, a girl stood up. She said that she sat next to in the same band class that Nick did before he died. And no one would have ever imagined that we'd all be in the Dominican in the same week, all there. And it was such a cool experience to not only be there to praise God, but to also help other people. And so I'd like to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to help other people along with people in the Dominican.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. I'm a junior at Portage High School, and this is Olivia. We'll be talking kind of about the fellowships and friendships we made with the people there. So part of our compound, there's like the building where we all slept, and there's 2 rooms, and then there's a kitchen, and then there's kind of like a back fence area outside, and you could go sit out there. Or you could go around, and behind the fenced area was a basketball court. And our group was the first people to go down there. There was one other church that had kids, but really we were the biggest group with young kids. Otherwise it was adults. And there's groups of young girls or little kids there. And as we walked out, they'd be like, my friend, and then they'd ask if we would like to buy bracelets that they were selling, or they would ask, like, can I braid your hair? Your hair is so bonita, like so pretty. And you would obviously have to pay for it, and some people got their hair braided not knowing that. But yeah. So we had like basketballs and volleyballs in the compound, and we brought them down. And the first day we went down was the first day that we were there. And there weren't as many people there, but there were some. And like the little boys would come and steal the balls from you, and you'd have to chase them to get it back. And they were just laughing the whole entire time. And it was super cool. They had a bunch of fun. And then the next day we went down, there was like double the amount of people, because they'd go and they told their friends, like, there's people here, come play with us. And you just got to see like their community coming together because of us, and we were there impacting their lives in such a small way. We were impacting them in a way that like you wouldn't think, just playing with them and being there, seeing like what their lives is like. People would go down every single day. One day we went down and there was a full game of basketball going on with a bunch of Dominican, like young adult guys, and some of them were good, but they wouldn't be able to play in school like we have basketball teams here, and it's kind of eye-opening to see how much we have and how little they have. And it helped me realize that we have to appreciate everything that we have. And another amazing thing is how their parents just trusted us with their kids. Like that little boy, I honestly had no idea who his mother was, but she was okay with us just carrying him around and playing with him, and it was amazing. I'm sure none of you would just let a stranger hold your kid when they're 1 year old. So It's pretty amazing, and I'm so thankful for being able to experience that. Hi, my name is Olivia, and I'm a sophomore at Portage High School. And I'm going to focus more on the friendships of our youth group. And this trip was the best week of my life. And I experienced so many things, and everyone here pushed me out of my comfort zone. And we bonded over the whole week. We were just, no one was left out. Everyone talked to each other. I have never talked to some of these people in my entire life, and I feel like we're best friends now. Lydia and I bonded over our insane hair because it was hard to deal with. And every day we would go into the worship room where we had like church every morning, and we would debrief about our day and just say how it impacted us, what we're going to do the next day. And those meant a lot to me because I got to really get deep down into God, and I was able to learn a lot about all of my friends. And then a lot of things I also liked was the talent show, even though that's kind of silly. It just, Cindy and Anna sang. We did the Continental Drift. If you don't know what that is, it's just a silly dance. But even though we weren't out helping others, I feel like everyone just came together then. Then the last day, Friday, everyone in the compound all came together, and we had sharing time where everyone would stand up, say how God impacted them, their favorite parts of the trip. And I actually stood up, and I'm not one to talk in front of others, but I did, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without all of those people sitting right there. And it was just amazing hearing other people's stories. And then after that, we all debriefed one other time. And I know for a fact, every single one of those people were crying. We were all crying. It was amazing. And I just want to thank all of you guys, because I wouldn't be the person I am today without all of you. And I love you guys. Thank you.
One more thing with the talent show, Jake, Colton, and Jack also did dad jokes for the talent show. So Jake and I will be talking about, we actually sponsored a house in the Dominican. It was called the Cameraman's House. That is Ruth. That is one of their kids. She actually, on the first day, we actually went there, and she stayed home because she did not have a backpack to go to school. So she had two backpacks. One had broken, and she lost the other one. And the reason for her not going to school is because she didn't want to not be like every other kid there. She wanted a backpack. So riding through the downtown right away, the first day that we went there, it was Jake, me, Emma, and Colton. We went there the first day. When we got there, it was so cool to see. But so riding through the town, there was murals painted everywhere. The houses were practically looked like they were just gonna fall to the ground. You know, riding through the streets, everybody would wave at you and be like, "Oh, the Americans, the Americans!" And it was such a cool experience to see that even though we don't impact them, they still see us as they know we're there to help them. So they just, it's like they're love us. So I don't know, it's really cool to see.
So when we got there was nothing there. There was an old cement pad, and it was all cracked and uneven, and you can see the old house was sitting on the side. It was all ripped up, and it fell over from the termites. So they've just gotten all the wood and destroyed the house. And one of the guys there said that before we came, it was leaning so bad, and it was holding up by a tree, and then it eventually fell. And so they wanted us to build a house for them.
When we got there right away, the carpenters. So we had there's two guys that came with us, and they also had like some more crew that they brought with them. But the two carpenters there had laid out everything that we were going to be doing for the day. So when we got there, all the guys pretty much got off, and then they sent the girls back. But they sent the girls back to go and get like all the wood and everything that we were going to need, and all the guys stayed there and actually dug the holes for the new like posts to be set in for the house. So that was pretty cool, but.
So then once lunch break came around, we all gathered around and prayed, and the owner of the house that we were building, Raul, he prayed, and then the interpreter went over it so we could understand it. And one thing that stood out was he said that he couldn't believe how lucky he was to have everything he had, even though he had nothing. We were building like a 30 by 18 house for him and his 4 children to live in. And it's just insane to think how they are just so grateful to have what they have, and they have like half of what we all have.
So, as I was saying about Ruth before, so she did not go to school. She was always around. Whatever we were doing, she was right there. But she was so attached to Megan. I know she made such a big impact on Megan's life. She loved Megan to beat everything. Like, we would leave and she'd be like wrapped around her, like didn't want her to go anywhere. She'd always say, no, stay with me, stay with me. And, but she actually, we would like play soccer with her, and the little soccer area that we had, it was like behind, so we had this big mound of gravel. And right behind this gravel, it was just this little area, and they set up like little can things, and we played soccer with them. But she thought it was the coolest experience that we were there and we could play with her. And she had such a big smile throughout the entire thing, never complained about anything. She never had shoes on. She'd walk around in the gravel, and there'd be like, oh, I could never do that, but it seemed really painful. But she had such the biggest heart and spirit, and it was so cool.
So when we left that day, we just dug all the holes and we set all the beams for temporary beams, so we didn't pour any cement yet. So all the beams were set and everything. So when we came back on Tuesday, we had to put all the cement and make all the beams level. And they don't have like cement trucks or anything, so we had to make all the cement. And the Dominicans that came with us, they were just working circles around us. It was insane how hard they worked, and they didn't stop for water or break or anything. It was just crazy to see.
So on Thursday, so we actually went Monday, Tuesday, and then our entire group went on Thursday. So since we sponsored the house, we asked if our entire group could go. So our entire group went, and we moved 30,000 pounds of dirt in about 2 hours. And they said they have never seen a group work harder than the Wisconsin group. And so the day before, they came with like a big dump truck and dumped it outside of the house. So it was like in the middle of a road, pretty much. And so we had 2 wheelbarrows, and everybody else had like shovels or were doing something else. And they would take the wheelbarrows and put them in there, and then I don't remember who's leveling it out. Chloe and Carol. There was 2 people leveling out all the dirt that was just being dumped inside of this house. And they said what they needed us to do, and we just went and did it, and there was no complaining, nothing. Jake, me, and Emma went on top of the house and put all the roofing on, and then we started doing like the foundation of the windows and everything and putting the siding on. And it was crazy to see from like at the beginning of the day how we walked in with our group and how much we accomplished from just, it's like 7 hours we worked. And it's crazy to think that we could get so much done. And so after we did that, we left a little bit early that day. So when we went down to the Dominican, we had lots and lots of softball and baseball stuff donated. So when we went down there, we were not told that we were not going to be like able to do a softball or baseball clinic. We thought we were going to be able to. So we ended up finding someone that was able to bring us to a community where we could give away and donate all of our stuff. So we ended up going to this one place. It was right next to a school. And we thought, it was going to be this fun little game. All these kids were going to show up. no. It was like MLB players are coming in. Like, they are dressed in every baseball attire you could think of. They had all these jerseys on, and we're like, we are going to die today. Like, but it was one of the coolest. They were so, like, they came in, they could talk to all, well, they couldn't really talk to us, but they tried to communicate with us. We had a translator there, his name was Pedro. He had so much fun with it. He loves baseball, and he actually played for the AAAs, but he lives in the Dominican now. So it was really cool to see how, like, he takes his own time out of the day to go there and help these kids try to take English classes so they can come to America and have a good life. And he wants them to play baseball, and he wants them to be a part of God. And he made everybody feel welcome, and we all enjoyed it. Chloe had a few moments where she really got the ball, you know, and she's out in the outfield, and she's like, please don't hit it to me, please don't hit it to me. Of course, the first ball gets hit right at her, and she, like, jumps up in the air out of the way, and all the Dominicans are laughing and screaming, and Megan said a few things in Spanish, and they're like, no, it's just 2 outs. It's not 2 outotos or something. They're like, no, it's just 2 outs. But it was such a cool experience. They loved every part of it. They loved that we donated to them. You know, they don't have a lot, but they loved it. Everything that we had, they were going to distribute it to more communities, and they just take the smallest things and make it so much better. So.
Another going off that is the translator told us how there's like 3 or 4 of them that are going to come into America and playing high school baseball at like academies. So they're really good. And we just can't thank you guys all enough for letting us go on this trip and giving us the opportunity to experience this. So thank you.
Alright, I'm Colton, I'm from PHS, better PHS. Alright, so I'm up here to talk about the cultural differences. So Emma kind of went over this. The first day we were there, we went to church service, and then we went on our hike. And when we got back, we either had the option to go shower, get ready for dinner, or go down to the basketball court to play with the kids or whatever. So on our way down, we got stopped by a bunch of people. Hey, my friend, buy a bracelet. And they didn't ask. You had to buy a bracelet. So anyway, we got to the basketball court, and all these kids they were down there playing and everything, and it was just so amazing how happy they were that we were there. They were hopping on our backs, pretending we were horses. We were running around, on our backs. It was crazy. And then I actually have a little journal entry from that day. It was so fun. While I was pretending to be a horse and giving them piggyback rides, an infant was falling asleep on Jake's shoulder. It was, sorry, I can't read my handwriting here. It's truly amazing how much they would trust us, even though we couldn't have a conversation with them. So that was just kind of cool. Another cultural difference was the traffic laws. I'm pretty sure there were none. So while we were in the cattle trucks on our way to our job sites, pretty much everybody that passed us was on a motorcycle or a moped or something. They were just going back and forth. It was crazy. I'm surprised we didn't see any accidents there. Yeah, and there were basically no cars. It was all mopeds and motorcycles. And there was speed bumps there as well. I'm wondering why. It was to slow them down, obviously. There was so many speed bumps, in the cattle truck. We knew a speed bump was coming up because we go fast and then we slow down, and all of a sudden, well, there's another one. Countless speed bumps, and there was only 3 traffic lights. I have the video in here, and people didn't even acknowledge that they were there. They were still going back and forth, Anyway, another cultural difference was they were so lively. There was music blaring everywhere. It was just crazy. There was actually there must have been a campaign going on to there was a truck driving through town just bumping music. And this guy's face was just on the thing. And I don't know, it was like an election or something, but that's how he was campaigning, I guess. So whatever works. And they were so friendly. We were driving on the cattle trucks on the way to our job sites, and we'd say hola, and they would just, it would seem like it just made their week. It was awesome. They would blow kisses at us, and I don't know if that's like catcalling or whatever. I thought it was cool. Another thing was trash there. Oh my goodness, trash out the wazoo. You look at the gutters, there was just garbage bags, freaking bottles, and on our way to the first church service, actually, we drove past the dump, and there was just so much trash. And, about 50 yards back in the woods, we could see smoke. That was actually from the burning the trash. That's why it stank real bad. So yeah, it was just kind of weird. And another thing, we kind of touched on this earlier, was all the church services we went to. We went to 3 of them. And every single one we went to, it was just crazy. Singing Kumbaya, doing conga lines and everything. Obviously, you guys don't, we don't do that here. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Everything was really upbeat. So, and one more thing. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to the congregation to support us. Obviously, we couldn't have done this without you guys. So, big round of applause for you guys.
So I'm Sydney, I'm a sophomore at Portage High School. So one of the biggest things that Dominican did for me was just change my perspective on life. So the first day we went out into Ado Mayor, we went to church. And one of the biggest things, I think Avery touched on this, that they said was that they don't deserve what God gives to them when they have nothing. Which is crazy to me because sometimes I don't even deserve what I have here. And it was just crazy that they were so thankful for what they had, even if it was like a slab of concrete that they lived on. Also, one of the things that stood out to me was how welcoming their community was. So they obviously didn't know who we were. They knew what we were there to do, but we'd go through town and just, hi, they just smile and wave, and they were just so happy to see us. And from that trip, I feel like I got more out of it than we gave to them. And even like at medical when we were there, for 5 hours I handed out pills, which isn't the most exciting thing, but then the last 2 hours, we just sat and we talked with the kids. And we couldn't say a lot, but like, I'm in Spanish 3, I think. I knew a couple words that I could say to them, but more than one of the biggest phrases, take a picture. They understood. I got home, realized I said the word wrong, but they still understood what I was trying to get at. But just everything we did, how like powerful it was and how high their spirits were, even though like they didn't have much to live off of. And they were just so thankful when we went and painted this church. The pastor just came around and hugged all of us. And he was just, thank you so much for like being here and doing what you're doing. And just like we couldn't even flush our toilet paper. Like I told everyone, I'm gonna get home and I'm not gonna flush my toilet paper. I'm just gonna throw it in the garbage. Like I've been living like this for a week and I'm never gonna do it again. And just through this experience, like with the Ohio shooting and like everyone that was there and everything, I think it just like made me realize that God does everything for a reason and puts people in like places for a reason to like help.
So as you can see, there have been many stories to share, experiences that we've made, and it is 100%, it has been an experience of a lifetime. I have had the pleasure to see it firsthand, and that's something that, since we've left, I have not gone a day without thinking about something throughout our trip. So just a little backstory. I talked to Pastor Rick. He kind of organizes Meeting God at Missions, and I said, look, I have a group of 17 kids. We want to help. We want to make a difference. What can we do? And he said, I have never seen a house in such poor condition, like we call him Cameraman's house. He's Cameraman's house because he owns a photography business. And he said, it's typically about $2,000 to build a house in the Dominican. If you want to make that your project, we would love that. So the Portage community, our church, and people just around from word of mouth, we raised $1,800. So that almost covered the entire cost of that family's home. So we sponsored, our group sponsored, while we were out there, we were known as the Wisconsin group. Everybody else had, their church name or where, just, hey, you're Gabby. But we were the Wisconsin group. No matter who it was, they said, hey, you're the Wisconsin group. That's who we were. So everyone knew that the Wisconsin group sponsored this house. So I put together a little video. It is 7 minutes. And again, I thank you so much for staying and listening to the stories. It truly means so much to the kids because I know that they've been so excited to share. It is 7 minutes, but I encourage you to really look at the detail. The first picture is the house that was leaning. It's kind of a harder picture to see, but then it's the transformation of our picture throughout the entire week. So let's enjoy the picture. And the family was so grateful for everything about it.
In body and in spirit. The Lord be with you. Lift up your hearts. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God.
It is you, thanks and praise.
It is indeed right. As we gather together this morning in faith, in hope, and in love, we remember that on the night in which he was betrayed, our Savior Jesus Christ took bread, blessed it, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body given for you. Do this for the remembrance of me." Again, after supper, he took the cup, gave thanks, and gave it for all to drink, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, shed for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sin. Do this for the remembrance of me." As often as we eat of this bread and drink of this cup, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And let us pray together the prayer that our Savior teaches all disciples, saying, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Would my servers come forward, please? The body and blood of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ strengthen you and keep you in his grace. Amen.
We just wanted to extend another thank you. I know I mentioned before that we raised $1,800 for this house, but that does not include the over $20,000 that we raised to make sure that all of us got there. So a week in the Dominican, airfare, hotel, food, everything, paid $300 to make such a difference in the community out there. Thank you, congregation. Seriously, we could not have done this without you. Parents, thank you so much for trusting that this, well, maybe hesitant. I know there was a little bit of hesitation at first, and I hesitated a lot day one when 24 hours of traveling, but to say that this was a life-changing experience, I truly believe that, and I'm so lucky that I got to experience it firsthand, and I am so grateful that your parents trusted the process and just let your kids experience this amazing opportunity. Jeff and Carrie couldn't be here today, so thank you to Jeff and Carrie and my sister Kelly for also coming with me. It was an incredible experience, and I'm very excited to say that this will be a yearly trip here at Bethlehem. So, very excited to go back next year. Let me know if you're interested. One last thing that we do before our breakfast every morning after worship and after the sermon, we would bless our breakfast and our day. So if all of you can stand and bless with us, we are going to turn around. Well, we're going to repeat this twice. The second time always has to be louder. That's just how we do it. We're going to turn around with them, and we are going to raise our hands, and we're going to bless us. This will be the blessing for the rest of the day. Again, thank you so much. And I ask if you have any questions or you want to hang out with us, we will be in the fellowship hall. Thank you again. Go ahead.